Airways Joint Committee, which amalgamated numerous carriers perform resupply work during hostilities. Many civil Dragon Rapides were impressed into RAF service upon the outbreak of war, but more than 500 more were produced as Dominis. They were used for radio operator training and light transport by the RAF and the Fleet Air Arm of the Royal Navy. Some of them were used also as ambulance aircraft. Cub, meanwhile, one of the most outstanding light aircraft of all time. Sold initially with just a 40 horsepower engine for only $1,000. The idea was to develop an aircraft for the masses, and that it proved. But they also played a key role in the war effort. The schools that were involved in the US civilian pilot training program from 1938 onwards, well, most of them were equipped with J3 Cubs, and in fact at one stage it was estimated that 80% of all US military pilots had undertaken initial training through that program on J3s. The production rate at one stage was 1 Cub every 20 minutes. They came to be used extensively in every theatre of World War II, with US Army field units. They performed artillery spotting, medical evacuation, liaison, and light in-field transport. They were used as Army Air Force station tanks, at least by the 78th Fighter Group at Duxford. And US Army L4s were among the first Allied aircraft ashore on D-Day. There's a remarkable story of an L4H Cub from the 58th Armoured Field Artillery Battalion, the mount of one Lieutenant Thomas K. Turner, which was one of 2 Cubs along with 11 jeeps that were aboard the so-called LCT, a landing craft trench that was making for Omaha Beach. One Cub was lost in the water when the landing craft grounded. Turner's was hauled ashore. It was destroyed by artillery fire, but he and his observer sheltered. They were unhurt. Turner went back to England. He picked up another Cub, and 11 days after D-Day, he landed on the cliffs above Omaha Beach. By the end of June 1944, 261 liaison aircraft, not just L4 Cubs, but also the larger Stinson L5 Sentinels, were operational with the First Army in France, assisting the ground troops as they made their way through the so-called bocage of Normandy, the compact tree and hedge-lined fields that are so characteristic of that part of northern France. The idea with the liaison aircraft was artillery spotting over the horizon direction of artillery fire. And of course, this was a very hazardous business for the pilots of these light aeroplanes. The one we see here, which is owned by Adrian Akers and operated by Air Leasing, was built in 1942. It went to the 8th Air Force. It served as a unit camp in France after the liberation. It's recently been restored by Richard Grace and the team at Air Leasing, flying again in 2012 in the markings of a Cub flown from the aircraft carrier USS Ranger for observation duties during Operation Torch, the Allied landings in North Africa of November 1942. 3 of them took off on the 9th of November that year. They were led in the lead Cub by Captain Ford Alcorn, who took off in his tiny L4 into a 35-knot headwind 60 miles from shore, running into anti-aircraft artillery fire from US ships who didn't immediately recognise the little liaison aircraft. Then as they went over the beach, they were fired on by French gun batteries on the shore as well. Alcorn himself was wounded and his aircraft set on fire. He just managed to side-slip it into land and get out of it before it exploded. Rolling now in